listening to the Motherhood Experience, a podcast where you are part of the conversation with moms, for moms, and by moms. Let's jump into this episode with me, your host, Val Kleppen. Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Motherhood Experience podcast. So glad to have you joining me today. Before I get started with the introduction of today's episode, I would like to kindly ask you to like, comment, share, save this episode, leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. It helps us get in front of those moms who need that coffee table mom talk encouragement. And if you would like to encourage other moms the way you've been encouraged by listening to the podcast, that would be one of the ways you can help us do that. So thank you so much in advance. Today's guest is a super fan of the Motherhood Experience. Not even kidding. She's been listening since before I published my first episode. She was in the text thread where I sent the introduction to the podcast. Thought it was going to be cute that I started a podcast and then was like, wait a minute, I think you're onto something here. And now full circle, she is a guest. And I am pleased to introduce you to our guest and my friend, Jessica Mefferd. Welcome to the Motherhood Experience podcast. I am so excited and maybe a little bit nervous to have my guest on today because she is a podcast aficionado. She listens to all kinds of podcasts. And in fact, when I told her I started a podcast, she was like, that's cute. But thankfully, she's become a big fan. Jessica, how are you?
I am so good. I am extremely starstruck right now. And like you said, I am a podcast aficionado. And so I can't believe that this is actually happening right now, but I'm so excited.
You listen to dozens and dozens of podcasts, and now you are a guest on one. I wasn't sure how I should introduce you. That just came to me. And I think that sounds better than introducing you as the woman who smells me.
That is also true, though. I suppose like we could do like multiple introductions over and over and over again because I feel like the ways that you could describe me are endless. But I am good with starting with the podcast aficionado and ending with the person who smells you. But you do. You always smell so amazing.
I feel like we should unpack that. It's because of the fact that on Sunday mornings when we see each other, I'm usually doused in peace and calming essential oil.
Mm-hmm. And it smells really good on you when we hug.
Yes, it does. Well, this hasn't started awkward at all. This is great.
Well, yeah, at least I don't have to worry about any awkward moments coming up, right? Done. Check.
All right. So I guess we should just jump right into then ages and stages, dear. So ages of kids and stage of motherhood you're in.
All right. So we have 4 kids in all. We have 2 boys, 2 girls. Lincoln is our oldest. He is 20 and he is a sophomore in college, ending his sophomore year of college. And then Natalie is the next oldest and she is 12. She's going to be 13. And if she was here right now, she could tell you the exact number of days. She's been counting down for like 40 days now. So she's almost 13. Brecken, our next boy, is 11. And then Lily is 7. So like from February until March or April, when Natalie has her birthday, I have no teenagers right now because I have a 20-year-old and a 12-year-old. So I've been in this like blissful moment of no teenagers. And there's a 7-year gap between Lincoln and Natalie, and then an 18-month gap between Natalie and Brecken, and then a 4-year gap between Brecken and Lily. So as far as stages, I'm not in the toddler baby stage. I'm in everyone's pretty independent stage. But yeah, Lincoln's 20, so he's so independent that it's like, I'm really glad I raised him to be independent, but it would be nice to be a little more needed. Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, yes, it'd be nice to be maybe hugged more. I don't know about needed. I was just talking with my husband today about the questions my children ask me all day long.
Oh.
And it's like, do you know where my earbuds are? Can I eat this banana? And it's just, do you know where I left my pencil? And then they come and find him and say, do you know where mama is?
Yeah. Yeah. Which is so funny because I won't hear from Lincoln for a while, and then out of nowhere I get "Mama" as a text message, like just on my phone, "Mama, Madre," and I'm like, "What? What do you need?" And it's, do you know where I left my earbud? No, that's when he's home. It's usually,
Right.
"Can I use your earbuds?" And did you eat the last banana? But
who is the football player that I said he looks like? Do you remember? It was a quarterback. It's a quarterback.
I don't know.
No, it'll come to me probably tonight at like 11:30. I'll text you.
Okay, that works.
I'll put it in the show notes if I remember the quarterback that I think Lincoln looks like. But let's talk about that age gap for a little bit. How did that 8 year? Is it 8 years? You said
it's
7.
7
how
years,
did this 7-year time gap happen between Lincoln and Natalie?
Okay, so Lincoln, I actually got pregnant with him 2 weeks after high school graduation. Complete surprise on that one. Obviously, I always like to say at least I made it out of high school. It was 2 weeks after high school. Not knocking anybody that did get pregnant in high school, but I'm like, hey, I made it that far. Had Lincoln. Things didn't work out with his dad and I. We did get married. We got divorced shortly afterwards. And I was a single mom for a while. Met my current husband, Andrew, got married. And it's kind of funny because, I say I got pregnant 2 weeks after high school graduation, 0 trying. I find the man of my dreams that all he wants to do is be a dad. He's so excited for us to get pregnant. He loves Lincoln to death. And it took us like 2.5, almost 3 years to get pregnant with Natalie because, God just works that way. And it was just so strange. Like, motherhood was not something I ever thought about until I was pregnant. And then I was like, holy, like a baby. Okay, what do you, other than like little cousins that I played with, I'm like, what do you do with a baby?
It seriously wasn't part of your like 10-year plan.
No. I was actually, prior to getting pregnant with Lincoln, I had just been accepted to Augustana and I was going to do pre-law. I was going to be a lawyer, or go into pharmaceutical sales, something. I was very career driven, very Jessica centered, like very thinking of myself. And so to find out I was pregnant was just like, what? Other human what now? Which obviously changed drastically the minute he came. But yeah, so Lincoln was a huge shock. And then Natalie took a really long time to get pregnant with her and then finally had her. And so then when we got pregnant with Brecken, I think my dad's comment was, you finally got the oven working and now you don't know how to turn it off. And I'm like, pretty much.
But oh, Dad coming in hot with the dad jokes.
Oh, yeah.
So were there complications with your pregnancy with Natalie?
Not really. And Andrew and I were pretty young in standards of being parents. Like when because we got married in 2004, or no, we got married in 2008. So we were about 24-ish. And so we just tried getting pregnant. It wasn't working. So then I eventually went to the doctor, and they couldn't like pinpoint anything wrong. I mean, there was like, there's this issue and that issue, but none of them mean that you can't get pregnant. We really don't have a reason why. And then Andrew eventually went to go get checked out, and he was perfectly fine. So I don't know if that was more frustrating, like if it would have been easier to just have an answer and this would be your fix. But I truly, truly, truly believe it was a lot of God's timing, and the lessons that we learned faith-wise during that walk were important. Though during that time, don't you dare tell me that. I did not want to hear that. But no, and then once I got pregnant with her, I did kind of freak out because we didn't do anything different, other than, trying to have a baby. And so then I did call the doctor. Okay, so this is also, we were living in Pierre at the time, the entire time we were getting pregnant. Andrew found out Walmart was moving him from Pierre to Mitchell, accepted the position. He was working down there. Lincoln and I hadn't moved yet, and I found out I was pregnant while he was in Mitchell. I was in Pierre. So I needed a new doctor down in Mitchell. So I was like, oh, I'm kind of cramping a little bit. I don't feel great. Could I at least come in and have blood work done? Which they said, yes, that's fine. And they did put me on progesterone just because of all of my past issues, to just make sure she stayed extra sticky. And then other than like morning sickness, and she just didn't want to come out, but
Yeah.
she was
Okay.
that's a whole testimony on Natalie. So
I'm interrupting briefly because my husband came through. Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow. Hey,
Joe
Brent.
Burrow
Yay,
is
Brent.
I asked him, who is the quarterback I think Lincoln looks like? And he's like, no idea. And I said, same year as Trevor Lawrence, but dark hair. Is there a Joe? And he came in with Joe Burrow. Thanks,
Yes.
honey.
Yes. Joe Burrow.
Okay. So I want to talk about your motherhood with the Joe Burrow lookalike when things were kind of, let's say, chaotic, maybe with the biological father after you had parted ways and you were a single mom, super young, single mom. What was that journey like in a nutshell?
It was very weird. I think because most young moms, I think maybe all moms would say we grow up with our kids, right? Like you do a lot of growing with your kid. And my life had just taken such a turn because like I said, I was in high school. I like lived a double life because I was National Honor Society. I was first chair in band. I'm student body president. You know, I'm just the go-getter. But then on the weekends, I am not making great choices. And I'm also the party animal person, right? And so though I was paving the way, I had a good academic scholarship to Augustana for pre-law. I really had paved that way. My other side of life just caught up with me. You know, you can't make those kind of decisions over and over again without consequences hitting. And so I went from this high pace, I'm going to be a career person thing to now someone else needs me. And I think my brother would verify and say that, you know, the Jessica he knew at 18, he never dreamed she could be a mom. You know, he was just terrified about me having a kid. And so Lincoln's biological dad was actually in the military and got activated about 4 months before Lincoln was born. So we were already kind of like, we only got married because I was pregnant. And so splitting up was kind of inevitable. So my mom was with me when Lincoln was born. And my mom just kind of always had this policy for me that, because I was going to school at the time and working. So if I needed to work late or I had class, my mom would watch Lincoln. But any other time, she was like, you know what? He's your son, your bed, you made it, you take care of him. And at the time, sometimes it felt harsh, like, oh, you know, why can't you just help me with this? But I look back at it, and what it did was it instilled a lot of pride for me. And like, I raised Lincoln, like the young Joe Burrow that he is today. You know, I made a lot of sacrifices, and it kind of took a while for me to like take credit for that. Because it also became a chip on my shoulder because I felt like I had a lot to prove to the world. Like, yes, I'm young. Yes, I'm single, but I have a job. I have my own house. I'm paying my own bills. My husband can attest to that in dating me, that I was like, oh, you're going to take us to the movies? You paid for the tickets. I ran to the concession stand and bought the pop and popcorn because I was like, I don't need anybody's help. I am doing this. Lo and behold, you do need help. Take help if you can. But, you know, I really appreciate my mom that she was just like, you're a mom now, and this is what you need to do. And I'm so glad she did, because Lincoln is an incredible young man. I'm super proud of him. And at least I know that I did it. It wasn't my mom raised him while I went out and partied and did college and stuff. You know, I had to make a lot of sacrifices, but they're absolutely 1,000,000% worth it, because I'm still a career woman. I still have a very successful life. I've been able to go on and do things. I just had to kind of back burner it for a little bit.
I love also how when you texted Lincoln to tell him that I thought that he looked like Joe Burrow, he said something along the lines of, oh yeah, he looks like me. Like, it wasn't like, oh, I can see how she would think I look like him. It was, yeah, he looks like me.
Oh yeah. Lincoln's confidence level is a 10 out of 10, 100%. Awesomeness. I always tell a story. Okay, so you know on Facebook they do those quizzes for kids, right? Like you type out, like you ask your kid these questions
Oh,
and
okay,
then you
sure.
post them.
Okay.
And I did it with Lincoln when he was in middle school, probably early middle school. And like the last question was, who do you love most in the world? So I'm like, you know, he's been raised in the faith and he loves me. So I'm like, it's either going to be God, Jesus, mom. I'm all ready to write it out. And his response was me, probably myself. Probably love myself the most. And I did. Immediately I was like, how do I post that? But then I thought about it more and I thought, you know what? How many kids nowadays have self-esteem issues? If he already loves himself the most, like I can work with that. I'm still working with that. But yeah,
But let's talk about that too, because he, like, things were rocky, at least from the very little bit that I know. Things were rocky with his biological dad in custody, and your husband Andrew wanted to adopt Lincoln, and so let's kind of unpack some of that, because there's some stuff y'all went through.
There is. And the fact that to like start it with saying how confident Lincoln is and the amazing young man he is. I try to tell him all the time. I'm like, if you look at people in this world that are suffering, it's because they went through things that you went through. And the way that you just walked through it and you walk now in it is just unbelievable. Like he just blows me away. So yes, I mean, I had him at a young age. I was 19 by the time he was born. And his biological dad and I, like I said, we did get married. He got activated and ended up in Iraq until shortly after Lincoln's first birthday. And while he was overseas, we decided to part ways. You know, the marriage wasn't working. He had aspirations that didn't always involve a wife and son. Yet I was going to college, I was working, I was raising Lincoln, and I just finally said, you know, I can't do this back and forth. Like, I need to start my life. So we did, and he immediately, when he got back, immediately was living with one girl and then another girl, and then she ended up pregnant and they got married, and that is who he's with now. But so, and he joined the full-time army and went to Germany right away. So Lincoln's biological dad was just really not a part of his life for probably the first 3 to 4 years. And I met Andrew when Lincoln was about 2. And I do remember we were doing something, and we spent a lot of time with Andrew's sister and her 2 girls that are Lincoln's age. And, you know, they're walking up to their dad, Brandon, and saying, Dad this, Dad that, Daddy this, Daddy that. So one day Lincoln just walked up to Andrew, and I don't even know if we were engaged yet, and was just like, Daddy, and then like finished the question. And I remember it was like a moment. Now, when Andrew and I first started dating, I made it very clear that I was looking for someone that wanted to be a father figure for my son, because that's just what I really wanted for Lincoln. And those 2 have always just been super, super close, because, you know, that's just all Lincoln has known. And then biological dad ended up having 3 kids before I actually had Natalie. So he had siblings with them. He spent time with them. But we had very different dynamics in our family. Our beliefs didn't line up with their beliefs. And most importantly, you know, Lincoln's biological dad and I always resorted to these 18-year-old teenagers that just fought that way. You know, I mean, we just couldn't compose ourselves very well. So our spouses talked a lot, or I talked to his spouse. And then Lincoln slowly started like spending summers with them. Right after Brecken was born, Lincoln actually spent a school year with them, because it was kind of a grass is greener thing. Like, now mom and dad have 2 kids. How do I fit in this? To which he immediately came back. And then that next summer, he went down to Oklahoma, and they said, well, we're going to be in South Dakota, which is where I live, to see our family, because they both had family here in South Dakota. And we're just going to drop Lincoln off early. And I was actually pregnant with Lily at the time. And so we said, okay, we'll meet you in Sioux Falls, because we were in Mitchell. They were in Watertown. And they pulled in the gas station, and Lincoln immediately jumped out of their car and ran inside. And I could tell that he was crying, but didn't think much of it. And so I went to go grab the bags from his biological dad and stepmom. And they said, just so you know, we let Lincoln know on the ride down here that we're going to terminate our paternal rights. And then just got in their car and left. And now, if you backtrack this, when they were still living in Germany, like when they were getting ready to move back to the United States, Lincoln hadn't seen them for 2 years. So we just asked, would you just terminate your rights and let Andrew adopt him now? And they said no, they wanted to form a relationship with him. And so we went through this chaos for 12 years to this moment. And yeah, that was my face too. And I'm pregnant. So Lincoln comes out and he is just bawling because he's just been told, we're going to be done with you. He was 13 at the time. Yeah, it was the summer he was 13. And I was like, okay. So we drive from Sioux Falls to Mitchell. Lincoln and I are both just bawling our heads off because he's so upset. You know, deep down inside, I'm like, yes, this is what I want. But at the same time, I'm like, not now.
Yeah.
So we did get a hold of his biological dad at that point in time and said, let's, this isn't what Lincoln wants. Because their point was it's just more fair for Lincoln if he just has one family. This going back and forth isn't fair to him. And I'm like, well, we live in a society of divorced parents where kids have two families all the time. Like, that's not a valid excuse to eradicate someone from your life, and his siblings. And so they said, okay, fine, we won't terminate our rights. And then we ended up moving to Pierre that fall, and they were coming to South Dakota to visit. And over Christmas, and Andrew and I had a lot going on with just moving our business here. We were acquiring another book of business. It was just a chaotic time. And his biological dad and I were not able to come to agreement as far as like what days he would spend with them. Would I drop him off? Would we meet halfway? Could they come pick him up? And so he eventually just texted Lincoln and said, you know what? Your mom is being unmanageable. We're just not going to see you. So Lincoln's like, okay, so you guys came all the way to South Dakota. You're a couple hours away and you're not going to come see me at all. And they were like, basically, because your mom won't bring you here. And so Lincoln just got extremely frustrated. There was another month or so of text messages back and forth. And eventually Lincoln just came out and he's like, what do we got to do here? So we got a hold of a lawyer and she said, terminate. Obviously he didn't want to terminate his parental rights, but Lincoln for a very long time had identified as a Mefferd. He had said, at school, he wrote Lincoln Mefferd. When he was in sports, we said Lincoln Mefferd. And a big reason that I did that was, when the coach is like trying to find who does this kid associate with, it was just easier if everybody had the same last name. And so our attorney said, you know what, he's 13, he's old enough. If he would like to change his name, he certainly can. So we'll petition to his biological dad for a name change. And at that time, so she contacted his biological dad's lawyer, to which he told his lawyer, if he wants to change his name, then I'm just going to terminate my rights, but I want to hear it from Lincoln. So we arranged a phone call one morning where he called and Lincoln answered and said hello. And he said, so I hear you want to change your name. And Lincoln said, yeah, I want to change my last name to Mefferd. And he said, well, then I'm just going to terminate my parental rights. And so the May after Lincoln's 14th birthday, he became a Mefferd and was legally adopted by Andrew. So that was 14 years of, going back and forth. And when I say different home values, in the fact that Andrew and I are very much so Christian based in our home, all of our family values and stuff are Christian based, whereas that family was atheist and didn't associate with Christ. But so that is Lincoln's life in a nutshell. And there was, verbally and whatnot, there was acceptance issues there as well. Like, you're the step brother, you're my half brother, all of those labels, where I don't even think my three kids, until they were older, which is a whole other thing, having to explain it to them that Lincoln's actually, has other family out there. But to them, that he's just Lincoln. He's just their brother. Andrew's been nothing but dad. That we don't use the word step or half or adopted in our family. We are just a family of 6, and it's been that way for a long time.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So having that age gap, then also with Lincoln, God bless him, endured so much, such a good kid.
Mm-hmm.
And these 3 much younger siblings. Lily is 11, you said?
No, Lily is 7. Brecken's
Lily is 7. Okay. So 13 years between him and his youngest sister. Mm-hmm. What's the sibling relationship like there?
Between Lincoln and Lily is hilarious, for sure. Because out of the 4, those 2 probably fight the most, but it's like play torment fighting, but Lincoln is an incredible big brother. My brother is amazing. Like, I could not ask for a better older brother, but Lincoln gives him a run for his money for sure because Lincoln is awesome.
Aw.
And there was the whole Lincoln's senior year was Lily's last year of preschool. So when Lincoln graduated and went on to college, Lily started kindergarten. And I was like, what did I do to myself here? But it actually makes it really easy to send one to college when you have one at home to snuggle with. Ask me again on Lily how it is sending them, or with Natalie at least. But Lincoln was not hard.
So I'm curious about this, Jessica, because you went from very Jessica focused, I think were your words, to, baptism by fire. You're in motherhood now, whether you plan to be or not. There's a 7-year gap between Lincoln and his next sibling. What changed for you? How did your mothering change? I mean, you had 7 years with Lincoln just as like your guy, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So how did your mothering change from him as an only child for 7 years to now having 4 kids?
I think the biggest thing is that I have a partner in crime now. I have Andrew. I just can't stress enough how different it is. With Lincoln, when I first brought him home, it was just, my mom slept on the couch for a couple nights because I had a C-section with him. And so she was just helping me out to bringing home Natalie, who was also a C-section baby. But Andrew is a hands-on dad. Like he loves his kids. So all 4 of them very, very much. And so just having someone else make decisions, somebody else, like I would nurse her on one side. He'd come grab her, change her diaper, wake her up a little bit, and let me nurse her on the other side. I remember the first night that he was like, you know what, you have milk pumped in the fridge. Why don't you just sleep and I'll do the overnight? And I'm like, say what? Well, and I don't know. Andrew and I have went back and forth. I don't know if by the 4th kid they just get easier or we're just smarter. I don't know. Because it's just been a million times easier with Lily, and maybe it's just because the other kids help out too. Well, and I think, like I said, with Lincoln, I had such a chip on my shoulder. Like I didn't like asking people to babysit unless it was like a high school kid that I was paying. If Lincoln was somewhere, I wanted to be with him and monitoring him and watching. It's almost like I felt like I had to prove to the world I wasn't that stereotypical teenage mother. Like I was taking care of my kid. He came first and everything, and he did, and I did it willingly. Other than God making a massive transformation in me, especially once Andrew and I got together, I don't know what happened. And it was weird because then I did want Natalie. You know what I mean? Like we tried so long for her, and it was just what I daydreamed about all the time was being a parent with Andrew from the beginning. And then Brecken came along so quickly that I cried, mainly because I was like, what am I doing to Natalie? Like she's only 9 months old and now I'm pregnant again. Like I didn't even get to enjoy this baby that I wanted so bad. To then Lily, who we both went back and forth, like, are we done? Are we not done? And I'm like, we are not done. So, I think just growing and learning and accepting help, and knowing that the whole world was not judging me. I mean, there certainly was judgment here and there. My favorite is when people are like, you're not old enough to have a 20-year-old. And I'm like, I know. But I do. So now where does this conversation go? Like I did. And yeah, it's always funny to me when people say that.
So before you and I, like, I don't know, started talking about real life stuff, because, I am just like, hi, it's good to be here. I'm just going to tell some jokes and let's move on. Before, like, I didn't know any of that. And then I think I kind of maybe I overheard you talking or something, and you said something about Lincoln's biological father. And I was like, what? Kind of got like whiplash in my neck a little bit, turning so fast. And then I was like, okay, so Andrew's not his father, but I'm pretty sure Lincoln's last name is Mefferd. So how does this work out? And it was, fairly recently, I think I sat down with you one day and I was like, tell me the story. because I think there's some stuff and I don't
Mhm.
know it and I would like to know it. And you were like, okay, like, and then we did
Let's unpack this. And I
chapter
mean,
1.
obviously, when I'm telling my side of the story, I come out smelling like roses. But I definitely made tons of mistakes as a single mom, though, too, you know, especially like the year that Lincoln and I lived in Aberdeen and I was in college was a mess in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. Um, but I don't know. I just, as soon as I found out I was going to be a mom, I've kind of been a person out to prove the world wrong. Like, the last thing you need to do is tell me I can't, because then I'm going to do everything I can.
Yeah.
And so when I found out I was going to be a mom, by all means, I was going to be a mom. And, you know, even when it was like prior to dating Andrew, poor Andrew, because I had dated other guys that, you know, would start, you know, instigating that they wanted to go on a date or whatever, I just say, well, I have baggage. I'm like, oh, I don't care about your baggage. And then it was convenient that for the short time that Lincoln's biological dad was in South Dakota, that the weekends I had Lincoln, they were so busy. And then the weekends I didn't have Lincoln, then they wanted to date and so on and so forth. And I was like, sorry, that's not how this is going to work. This is, and so poor Andrew got the shaft pretty hard of me being like, nope, I have a son and I know you want to do all this stuff with me, but no. And he's like, so bring your son along. And I'm like, I'm not going to bring my son along to meet you. I haven't even met you yet. And he's like, okay, well, I'm sorry. I just, tell me what you want. And I'm like, I don't know what I want. But, you know, I just, yeah, it was just very weird that I even found Andrew, and he wanted to be a dad just as much as I wanted someone for Lincoln to have a dad. I could never have imagined in that 2-year span, 2.5 years, when it was just me and Lincoln all the time, that there would ever be somebody that loved him as much as I did, or, you know, cared about him so much. And so to see somebody that not only loved and honored me, but just loved and honored Lincoln so much to the point that, you know, he was immediately a Mefferd. And it wasn't just Andrew, it was his family too. Like, the first time Lincoln called Andrew's mom Grammy, that was more terrifying than when Lincoln called him dad. You know, we're setting the table for Thanksgiving, and all of a sudden, you know, again, Naomi and Abigail, my nieces, are like, Grammy this, Grammy that. And Lincoln turns and goes, Grammy, da 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 da. And Julie's eyes just well up with tears. And she goes, yes, you can call me Grammy. And I was just like, how is this even possible? You know, like, I think for so long, I was so worried about how much I messed up Lincoln's life. And he and I had that conversation that I'm like, I don't regret having you. I regret what I put you through. And I hope that as you make adult decisions and stuff, you think about how your childhood was and what you can do to prevent that. And so I was just always felt like I had failed him somehow, you know, with my decisions of, you know, maybe I shouldn't have married his biological dad and never let him in his life, or I should not have stuck it out. But, you know, those were the things in my head, like, what am I doing to my kid? And then when I met the Meffords and saw the love that they had for him, was just, I was like, just blown away.
And isn't that so God? Isn't that
It is so God.
so God, that no matter the mistakes we make, the poor choices that we fall back on, all of this, the redeeming Father has it all worked out.
Yeah.
He's got it all worked out.
Yeah.
That's just incredible. And like, I never would have guessed that you were like, no, I'm not. Motherhood's not for me. I never would have guessed that. You're kind of like a mother hen. You know what I'm saying? Like, just to people you meet in general, you're making sure they're taken care of. You're making sure they've got what they need. They're over here being talked to. Like, what happened?
I feel like if my brother could, like, insert himself right here, he would just be like, she is not who she was. I mean, you talk about a 180, 360 complete turnaround. And I was not a great kid in high school. I did not make great decisions. I made some really awesome decisions, but I equaled them with terrible decisions. Awful, terrible decisions. And so I think my parents would also just be like, we can't believe that she and Lincoln are here and alive and great today. Probably my dad did tell Andrew when he asked him if he could marry me. The last one brought her back. There's no return policy. And then he went and told all of his friends, Jessica's fiance is marrying down. And if he ever figures that out, she's out of luck. And I'm like, thanks, Dad. Thanks. But no, I mean, he was right. I did marry up. I married up so much. And now the whole world knows it. But it's too late. We are 4 kids in, 16 years of marriage. He's done for. He's stuck. He can't go anywhere.
Oh, my word. Dad.
Oh, where do you think my sense of humor comes from? It is from my dad, 100%.
Oh, no, I get it. So, I mean, let's kind of dovetail that into how are you instructing and coaching and encouraging your kids today to make better choices, to live differently from how you did?
Lincoln can attest to it. You know, with him especially, we were very diligent about no social media. There were a handful of times that he had Snapchat for maybe a day and then got it taken away. No Instagram, no Facebook. Actually, his cell phone had no internet access at all. We restricted that. You could call and text people. And one of the things Lincoln was really good at was pushing buttons and boundaries. He's very much so always been, this is the line, I'm going to touch the other side of it, just to be sure this is, if you're positive this is where the line is, or maybe you want to move it. I'm just checking. I'm just checking. So there became a point in time where all of his text messages were forwarded to my phone. And so, you know, his friends would send him something and he's like, you know, my mom's going to see that, right? And then they'd be like, oh man. I was like, well, then don't say dumb things. Whatever, you know.
Yeah.
90% of it was just really dumb stuff that I wish I didn't have to endure. But so with him, it was just, I was just like, the thing is, Lincoln, in today's society, you can get yourself in trouble so fast, especially with social media. Things can be sent to you unsolicited, or you can make comments that you can't take back. Like we just need to protect you from yourself. You know, and there was kickback on it in places, but he really, granted, sometimes like he would sneak an iPad from a friend and get an Instagram account, and, you know, kids will be kids. It is what it is. But that has trickled down to, you know, also Lincoln was exposed to things in those years where he was with his biological dad. He was exposed to things that maybe I wouldn't have preferred him exposed to, but, you know, you can't do anything about that. And once you're exposed to something worldly, it is really hard to get rid of that. With the other 3, they have always, except for the exception of Natalie, she did kindergarten in public school in Mitchell, but ever since moving to PR, kids have had Christian education. And we reflect that in home. You know, we're very active at the church as well, but just reiterating to our kids that being a confident Christian in a worldly world is difficult. And like Natalie and I actually had a really long road trip conversation about how I know you're very different than other girls your age. And I understand that maybe it's not fun, or maybe girls give you a hard time. But, you know, I am just very firm on the fact that Natalie's 12. She's almost 13, but she has all the time to be a kid that she wants. She doesn't need to know about so many scary worldly things. And I think that she's very fully aware of, you know, someone tries to grab you, scream, kick, get their DNA, get away. You know, I mean, that's my true crime podcast side coming out. That's like,
I was just going to say,
baby, you get away and you get away
the podcast
hard.
genre.
No, but, you know, and we have like the sex talk gently and stuff. But at the same time, I'm like, you know, if she doesn't know what it is, I'm okay with that. We don't do sleepovers very often unless it's very close friends. Like she might go to Midland and spend the night, or with family. But Natalie is never in a situation, to the best of Andrew and I's ability, where she can be taken advantage of, that she needs to know what those things are right now. And I know there's a lot of the world that are like, then she's naive and she's got to learn eventually. And I agree. She has to learn eventually. But right now she is so sweet and innocent and just living such a good 12-year-old life. Like, why do we need to, why do we need to taint that? And Brecken and Lily will be the same way. Like, I just feel like in society, we're in such a rush for our kids to grow up and to expose them and prepare them. And I'm like, and we will, and we do, and she actually, she just can't hear this until after her birthday. But she is getting a promise ring from Andrew and I for her 13th birthday, where we are going to sit down and talk with her, about the importance of saving yourself. And we're in this transition where we have crushes on boys, which, and then we talk about it. Like, what is it you like about them? Them being cute is not a good enough reason for us to want to settle down the rest of our life with them. But what we should really be concentrating on is that I love Jesus, and Jesus has my heart right now. And you'll get to the point someday where you can have a man. But, I think when I look back at it, my mom was incredible. My dad looked out for me in the ways that a dad would, but never once did anybody tell me that I should save myself and why. Like, I knew of it, but nobody ever sat down and explained to me that someday I would have a husband that I loved and cared about, and that I would, I wish I hadn't been married prior to Andrew. I wish he was my one and only. And so these are just the raw, honest things that I talk about with Lincoln, and that I'll talk about with Natalie of, and not everybody has those firsthand experiences like I do to be able to share them with your kids. But those are just the choices that I'm making, and it's worked out. I mean, Lincoln turned 20 and I'm like, see, I was already a mom by the time I was your age. So hey, if you flunk out of college or get fired from a job, you're still doing better than I did, babe. Way to go. Good job. Success. No, but those are just the beliefs Andrew and I have. And others have talked about this too, but it's the same thing. Like, we have values in our home. So the rules that Lincoln had might not be the same rules for Natalie, and they might not be the same for Brecken or Lily, but every rule is going to line up with our family values. And, like, Lincoln got a phone for his 13th birthday, but that's because he was traveling back and forth between Oklahoma and South Dakota on airplanes.
Yeah.
And so Natalie thinks she's getting a cell phone for her 13th birthday, but she is not, because she doesn't need one.
Yeah. Oh, well, Jessica, this I hope, has been as fun for you as it has been for me. I'm so glad to have you as a guest on a podcast, along with being one of my number one fans.
I am. I think I would be the number one fan if I had not started another fan club prior to this. And I mean, if I could be the president of 2 fan clubs, which I think you could, I would. But I'm pretty sure I was instructed. And the other person's fan club that I'm the president of is kind of a high maintenance president to take care of. So
I'm so sending her the link to this episode, because I know who you're talking about.
Oh, she knows.
Hi, Alicia. Hello. So thank you again for coming on here. I really had no idea. I learned so much, and I know that this episode will bless the listeners as well. And
I hope so.
I hope that you just keep being a number one super fan of the Motherhood Experience.
Oh, absolutely. I've already told you that you could delete this whole thing, and I'm still going to be a number one fan.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of the Motherhood Experience podcast. To join our exclusive TME community, head on over to themotherhoodexperience.com/learn more. Be sure to follow the Motherhood Experience on Facebook and Instagram, and please leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment below, and we'll catch you next time.